Hey everybody, welcome to Beyond the Saga. Dave Cottingham here with Hannah Burr. Good evening, Hannah.
Good evening, how are you?
Doing good. We are back on Beyond the Saga talking about all those stories from the books, the comics, the video games, beyond the Skywalker saga. And we are talking tonight about Thrawn, since he is our main villain in the series Ahsoka that is airing right now on Disney Plus. And if you've been following us, or if you haven't, go back. We have already reviewed the Thrawn trilogy that Timothy Zahn put out as part of the first several books of the new canon series. And then all of a sudden he came out with a whole new trilogy of Thrawn books. And this one is called Thrawn Ascendancy, Chaos Rising. It's the first book in this Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy. And like I said, written by Timothy Zahn. The original release date of this thing was back in 2020, September of 2020. And as you pointed out, which I wasn't too aware of, but as you pointed out, this book takes place during the Clone Wars, which we'll get into a little bit. But yeah, Thrawn. You know, we're learning a lot about Thrawn in these books. You know, everybody knew of him obviously before this because he was introduced back in the 90s when the Heir to the Empire trilogy came out. So Thrawn has been a very popular character for years and years and years. But he wasn't introduced until this canon, this era of Star Wars in canon, until those three books came out, the original three books that Timothy did during the Disney era. And then, of course, he was brought into the animated series, Star Wars Rebels. But then now he is in live action, played by the same guy that voiced him in Rebels, Lars Mikkelsen. So, Hannah, overall, I know you got through all three of these books already.
Yes.
I've already gone through the first one, so you got to kind of focus your mind on just this book. But overall, what'd you think about this book when you got through it?
So when I got through it, I feel like it was definitely very much of a more educational book in the sense of, besides one little bit, we are literally completely outside of the Skywalker saga. We're outside of the Republic. We're not even close to the Republic. We are in a completely different part of this galaxy, or we're actually in a completely different part of this galaxy known as the Unknown Regions. But the Chiss call the Chaos. And we learn more about the Chiss, about the 9 ruling families, about their political system, their family system, because there are 9 ruling families, but then there are other families, and you can trade family members if you want. You can claim people that are unclaimed. We learn more about their Skywalkers. So I feel like a lot of this we still don't get anything from Thrawn's point of view. We still don't. And I think that's amazing, because I don't know if we could handle it if we entered Thrawn's mind, because once again, we see the mastermind he truly is in this series. We see it through the point of view of other people. We see it through the point of view of people like Aralani, who is, I would argue, his best friend, his number one supporter. She just admires him and is just wowed by him, not in like a romantic type of way, very much like very much in like a brother sister in arms type of way. But then you get other people within the Chiss Ascendancy who are just like, who the heck is this guy? I hate him. So we get to see both perspectives. We learn a lot more about the Chiss, how they're raised, their systems and all that. And meanwhile, we get some memories. So Thrawn we see how he rises through the ranks. We see him at work. he's trying to work some things out, and in the process of working things out, and it seems like a conflict is resolved, it actually pulls back the curtain on a bigger threat that actually could threaten the Chiss existence as a whole, which is insane. We also hear about, and we're teased about this one time where Thrawn made a huge mistake and a huge miscalculation, which, knowing Thrawn's history, if you read the first trilogy, that just like takes your breath away, because you're like, how the heck did Thrawn mess up that bad? Like, because it was bad. The fact that everybody keeps talking about it, it means it was very, very bad, which is uncharacteristic of Thrawn in general.
Right.
So, like, that's me trying to put it in a nutshell without spoiling anything. But it's, after reading this trilogy, it's not my favorite of the trilogy, but I think it's a good book. And I think it actually, looking back after getting through books 2 and 3, it really helped set up what was needed for 2 and 3. And it helped make a lot of things make more sense. But what was your takeaway as someone who hasn't finished the trilogy and you've only read this one book?
Yeah, and going into it, I think, I don't think I was entirely aware, and that might have been just my fault not researching. But when Star Wars Thrawn came out, which is the first book that Timothy Zahn did in this new canon, I didn't realize then, I think, that there was a trilogy of books coming. I thought that was it. Maybe he'd go on something else. So I was excited when Thrawn Alliances came out, then Thrawn Treason came out. And then when I heard this was coming, I knew, I either read or I knew this was going to be a trilogy of books. So going into it, knowing it's a trilogy, it definitely feels like the first book of a trilogy. Like like you said, there's a lot of setup, there's a lot of introduction, there's a lot of history because here's the thing is, I don't think you technically don't have to read the other trilogy, but like you mentioned, Arlani is in those books, right? Mainly in Treason. And so you get that setup of the Ascendancy a little bit before you actually get into the Ascendancy in this book. So it was helpful to learn a little bit about some of those characters in Thrawn Treason, that, because they were, the main thing of that was they were fighting the Grisks.
Yeah.
And he needed help from Arlani and all that stuff. So now you're getting the full backstory of the Chiss and Thrawn and Arlani and all this stuff. So it's, and like you said, though, what's interesting, very similar to kind of, I guess, I'm most intrigued, which is weird to say, but I'm most intrigued, like you said, by the location of this story, because like Ahsoka right now, they're in a whole different galaxy. These books are taking place in a whole other part of the galaxy that we know really nothing about. The Unknown Regions, and we were talking about it before, it's like the Unknown Regions are, I've always wondered why are they unknown? Like they're able to travel all over this galaxy and map it and develop societies and make them part of the government. But for some reason, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, no one's tried to map the Unknown Regions or get in there. Well, I mean, as we're learning, there is a society there. There is organization there. But because of it's weird that they call it the chaos. It's because of the chaos of the stars and the black holes and everything. It makes it very difficult to travel in. So that's pretty much why the Republic or the Empire, anybody hasn't really. But we do know of planets in the Unknown Regions, right? Exegol and Elam, they're all in the Unknown Regions. So,
but it makes sense.
That part fascinates me.
Well, yeah, but it makes a lot of sense that like the planets you mentioned are like home places for people who are Force sensitive. I mean, that's why you have the Skywalkers. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Skywalkers are essentially girls between the ages roughly 6 and 14 who have what they call the third eye, which we would know as the Force. So they're able to detect what's coming so they can guide these ships safely through the chaos because they know where the ship needs to go and they can pilot the ship and help it avoid all those black holes and everything like that. I don't think this is much of a spoiler, but there's another group that we're introduced to in this called the Pathfinders. And the Pathfinders are basically pilot freelancers who are Force sensitive. And they do the same thing. You hire and that's kind of how it works. You have to hire a pilot if you want to travel through the chaos, because otherwise you might run into a black hole and not know it.
Yes, right. No, it's great. It's very intriguing, but that part is really good, and of course, overall, I mean, yeah, it's definitely set up to what I think is, like, you already know it's coming, but what I think is coming in these next two books. I'm very interested in getting excited to keep going and dive into the next book, which is called Thrawn Ascendancy, Greater Good.
Mm-hmm. So while the second book in the original Thrawn Alliances,
yeah.
While that's one of my favorite Star Wars books of all time, I would say in general of what I've read, Thrawn Ascendancy is one of my favorite trilogies. Like, it's up there with the Lord of the Rings trilogy for me.
Wow. Okay.
So I'm just going to throw that out there right now.
That's pretty strong. I like that.
Yeah. So I know that the first book is a bunch. It's a lot of setup, but if you choose to read it, please just hang in there. It's not that it's bad. It's very educational. It's very knowledge dumping.
And I think you said it maybe before we started going, but it's not. I feel like, thinking back, and because it's not. I didn't do this book straight through for like over a couple of weeks, which I usually do. This book took me a long time to get through because I was listening to it, so it was hard times. So I lost sight sometimes about where we were, and I had to kind of refocus. But I think I believe what you're saying, that this ended up being not as much about Thrawn, but honestly more focused on the Skywalkers and the caretakers and what was her name? Cheery,
who's the main Skywalker that's a part of this journey. And then she has a caretaker called my God,
Thalius.
Yeah, Thalius, who was a Skywalker.
Right.
And she chose to come, and Skywalkers normally don't come back and choose to be caretakers, but she chose to do so, which, actually proves to be beneficial. Shocker. Somebody who actually knows the person they're taking care of, what they're going through, actually does a great job taking care of them. Because, it's a lot. And I think it just brings a whole new appreciation, because we are introduced to the Skywalkers in Thrawn, the original trilogy. We are introduced to them, but I don't think we necessarily understand what they've gone through. And this book just brings it to a whole new light.
Agreed. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, and I would 100% encourage people to listen to the audiobook, because you get Mark Thompson, who is to me, he's the GOAT in audio, and that's not saying much for me, because all I listen to is Star Wars books. So I don't know anybody else that's reading out there, recording now, how do you say it? Or voiceovers for narrating books. But he is like,
oh my gosh.
And because I haven't read these books. Like, have you read these or have you listened to them?
I started reading the first, and then I think I had a road trip. I think I was driving up to Pennsylvania back home. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just get the audiobook. And as soon as I listened to it, I'm like, I'm not reading this. Are you kidding me?
Well,
I'm not reading
because
this.
because when you're reading it, I guess, if you know the voice, you could probably listen. You could probably hear his voice, Thrawn's voice, right?
Yeah.
But he does Mark Thompson does Thrawn's voice flawlessly, and it's amazing to hear him do the reading. It's just phenomenal.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So he did the first Thrawn trilogy, and now he's done these. So that's why I'm interested and excited to get back into them. Okay, so overall, what's your rating on this one?
I think I'm going to give this one a 4.
Okay.
Not as high as the ratings I'm going to give the other books.
Okay.
But it's still really, really good. It's still very educational, and it's, especially in hindsight, it's needed to set everything else up.
Yeah. I'll give it a 4 as well. I think I liked it, and I think you're right. I can kind of feel like the other ones are going to even be a little bit better. But what about, I guess, overall, I think we can eventually talk about the impact all 3 of these books have. But, on the Star Wars saga, what kind of impact does this have?
I mean, I think eventually, this kind of sets everything up for what Thrawn ultimately becomes. But
yeah,
I would say at the moment, I don't think it has that big. If you were to isolate this book by itself, except for that one scene, which I'm not going to spoil, but you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Outside of that one scene, I don't think it impacts the Star Wars, the Skywalker saga at all.
And that's exactly, and I think that's exactly right, because we're in a part of the galaxy that's not impacted with the other stories and other parts of the characters that we're used to. So yeah, it's almost as if this takes place in a different galaxy in a sense.
Which I think that's why I love this trilogy so much, is that it's so refreshing to see something outside of the Skywalker saga set in the Star Wars, because it still feels very Star Wars. It's still totally. And technically there are Force wielders, but there's no Jedi. There are no lightsabers. There's none of that. And it still feels so Star Wars. It's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, agreed. I definitely agree. All right, so that's great talk, great review. Just like we normally do on Beyond the Saga, we're not going to spoil anything. So we want people to experience these things and go read them and talk about them amongst yourselves and let us know what you thought about them. But, we're here to just kind of give you our overall thoughts, and come back and go back and listen to or watch more Beyond the Sagas here on Inside the Force. We'll deep dive into them a little bit more, and we'll continue. As soon as I get through the second book, we'll do that one. And as soon as I get through the third book, we'll finish it up. Hannah's a little ahead of me right now on some of these, so
which is kind of weird. I'm not gonna lie.
It is weird. You've caught up, because I was way ahead of you for a while,
and then it was like,
yeah. But you go through these so fast. It takes me a little bit longer. All right. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening and watching. And of course, if you want to support the show at Patreon, we're at patreon.com/InsideTheForce. Thank you to our patrons for the support there. We really, really appreciate it. And of course, come back here, subscribe here on YouTube if you just found us. Of course, we're on all the podcast feeds. Our Inside the Force weekly show is there every week on any podcast platform you listen to. And keep letting us know what you all think.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Hannah.
Comment, yes. Smash the like button, smash that subscribe button.
Yes, smash it.
Smash it. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Take care. Have a great rest of the week. We'll see you next time. May the Force be with you.